folks, and welcome to another episode of Hash It Out. We're really happy that you're here listening to us talk. My name's Justin Moorhead. As always, I'm here with Mitchell Evans. We're going to discuss James chapter 2, verses 14 through 26. Faith without works is dead. Deceased.
Boom.
Dead. And man, that's a lot. And so we're going to talk about that, what that means. The idea with Hash It Out, if you're new to Hash It Out, or if you've not watched these or listened to these before, is the most recent sermon that was preached. We just kind of use that, some of the ideas from the sermon and certainly the passage, to try to have a edifying conversation for someone who wants to kind of use it as a springboard into some other ideas. And so we'll just do our best to do that for you. One of the first things we're going to tackle today is contradictions in the Bible. First, real quick answer, does the Bible have them? Contradictions?
Nope.
Nope. All right.
Perceived. Yeah,
contradictions. So we've got a verse. I'm going to read a verse from James, and then Mitch is going to read a verse from Romans.
Okay.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is James, the passage that we're in, James chapter 2, verse 24. Let me find it. 24, little letter, little numbers. Okay. He says, "You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone." And what do you have?
"For we hold that one is justified by faith apart from works of the law." Wow. Yeah.
I don't know, man. It sounds like that's a contradiction. What do we do with this?
Yeah, so I think they're not a contradiction in the shortest sense. A guy who's an expert on Romans and James, actually one of the world's leading experts, is a man named Douglas Moo. Old Dougie Moo, so I like to call him. The way Dougie approached this, I'm kind of undermining his credibility. Yeah. Hey, anyways, the helpfulness of it is, Paul's emphasis in Romans is on how somebody is made righteous. You might say how you be saved, how you become saved, how you are saved. This initial starting point. James's vantage point is how you get into heaven, how you pass through Judgment Day. So it's two separate vantage points. So I do think it's helpful. John Calvin was even helpful in this. He was saying, works do not confer right standing with God on you. And they don't confer that on you, and that is Paul's point.
Yeah.
You won't earn being in right standing with God.
Sure.
James's point is, once you're in right standing with God, you cannot say, well, I got there and that was all that was required. Anybody who's genuinely gotten there will find that this gets worked out in the rest of their life, leading up to Judgment Day, and they will be demonstrated that I was in right standing with God because God worked this out in my life.
Is justified the word that they're using to mean these two different timestamps? The moment you believed and were now no longer enemies with God, but you were in right standing with him, and then flash forward the rest of your life, the moment you pass from this world into the next and you're in heaven, that there's a justifying component to both of those?
Yeah, so the key idea in short, Romans 3:28 points out you're justified. James, we got to take a little bit more of his context. So in this passage, he is saying, you can see how it correlates very easily. Says he has faith but does not have works in 4:14. Yeah. So if someone says he has faith but does not have works, can that faith save him? So he's claiming to have faith, and then the salvation would be later on down the line on Judgment Day. Can that faith save him? So they're talking about two different points in time. They are talking about overlapping ideas, but they're not contradicting each other in that sense. If we make them both talking about the same concept, we are not being faithful to their context, what they're really saying in context. So while the verbiage from the two verses is very similar, I think to see them as contradictory would actually be an error on our end, and not stepping back and saying, okay, what's being addressed here? So you can use similar language.
And the key then to not falling into the kind of lie that the Bible has contradictions would be to be really careful about context.
Yes, be careful about context is a huge piece in this particular instance.
Right.
Some other times what we find is verses that seem to contradict each other, is because they're drawing out a similar component. And actually that's, that idea is brought out here in James. So James is saying, on the one hand, he knows what's in the air, is that people think, well, if I've made a profession of faith, then I'm good regardless of what happens from here on out.
Sure.
He knows that's in the air. Acts chapter 15 says that James and Paul are on a council together determining doctrine in the first church ever. So they're on this council together. They're interacting with each other. They're both operating in similar spheres. That doesn't mean that James is contradicting Romans. I think Romans actually came afterwards, after the writing of the book of James. However, James is aware of this early pervasive thought in Christianity that if it's by grace and I've accepted that, then there should be nothing required of me beyond this point.
Right.
Whereas they both ultimately say this in different ways. Paul calls it, coins the phrase, sanctification. And that is what James is referencing, is that God has this completing work that's going to go on in your life because you're a believer. And that if you don't have the completing work going on in your life, it's showing you were never a believer to start with.
And that idea that was pervasive in James's day of claiming to be a Christian and then living the rest of my life however I want, and since it was by grace, it should really have no bearing on what I do, is also not uncommon now. You referred to in the sermon as carnal Christianity. This idea that there was the prior time early in life where I professed faith, or I prayed a prayer, or I did a thing. The illustration that you used was a VBS where there was an altar call of sorts at the end of VBS. Do you want to go to heaven or hell? And everybody who said, well, I'd prefer heaven over hell, is then told, well, then you'll never have to worry about it because from now on you're a Christian, or whatever the case may be. A question I have with that, though, is it wrong or unwise to be motivated or to motivate others towards faith in Christ by way of avoiding hell, or fire insurance as people call it? If that was kind of this poor tactic that was being used by this VBS church of who doesn't want to go to hell is now a Christian. But to what degree is that wise or a legitimate motivator to faith in the Lord?
I think it's good. I had this debate with a guy, a pastor, a number of years ago in Tennessee, and they did what was called a judgment house. Have you ever been to a judgment house?
I've never been. I've heard about them. I've never been to one.
So they did a top-notch judgment house. What they would do is it's playing on a haunted house at Halloween time, and you bring people in and you have kind of this haunted house moment where you try to scare them, but you scare them instead of Jason jumping out with a chainsaw. You got a demon who jumps out with a pitchfork, but you're still in the dark, right? And you poke somebody with a pitchfork. And so they would do all these things. There's these demons that are going to come get you. But the premise of it was somebody has had a car accident. They would bring in a wrecked car from a junkyard, a freshly wrecked car from a junkyard. I told you, it's top notch. So they bring in this car. You've just had an accident. Where are you going to end up? And so you kind of pick these routes. Of course, they pick it for you. You've got one route you can go, and they send you in this scary thing with these demons, and you walk into this dark room and get poked by a pitchfork. Or you can end up in heaven, and so then you walk out of there, your final spot after being, as they would say, after having the hell scared out of you. Right? You end up in this like pleasant room where it's heaven, and then they ask you, which one do you want?
Right.
Well, it had nothing to do with the relationship with Jesus, any of these things. His argument was, if we scare somebody into making a profession, that's just as legitimate. Clearly, the New Testament doesn't take that approach. Jesus in particular does not take that approach. He does tell ultimate realities that do await you. If you end up walking away and never trusting in Christ, there is a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth. Jesus doesn't shy away from ultimate realities, but he's not saying put your faith in. It's the object of your faith that's the issue. He doesn't say put your faith in, you want paradise one day.
Right.
Put your faith in a relationship with Christ. The reason I think that's key to the whole argument is that when he says put your faith in your relationship with Christ, he says you're going to take up a cross and follow him. It's not going to look like heaven initially. right? It's going to look like walking to capital punishment in their day, carrying this cross. It's going to look like sacrificing initially. So I think the whole premise, scaring somebody out of hell into heaven, undermines their experience.
Yeah.
Because even if they did commit, I want to follow Christ, they're confused on what this is. You told me this would be like heaven. I'm trying to get away from bad stuff, bad consequential life. And Jesus is saying, well, no, it's going to be a sacrifice. So I think the whole thing muddies the water to such a degree that it would never be helpful. And I would go so far as to say, nor would it ever actually be successful, because the object of the faith, what I'm putting my faith in, is not my destiny. It's in a relationship with Jesus.
That's good.
So, I would say it doesn't work out. They should have just done a haunted house. We have a cool haunted house. Oh, and if you want to know about Jesus at the end, we'll talk about that too. Yeah.
No, that's
They were
good
good at haunted house. Very good.
Yeah, they probably would have done great then.
Yeah.
Just switch Jason for the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be good. So this concern that James has for living out your faith, or there being works that are in your faith, a part of your faith. Jesus talks about this too in the Sermon on the Mount, which you referenced, and this idea of going through a wide gate on an easy path, or a narrow gate on a hard path, and this idea of, if we're wanting to be self-evaluating in this, which I think is, James certainly is going to bring you to that point where you think, okay, I need to look at my life. So if we're looking for the path, okay, what path am I on? Because this is going to be indicative of the works being done in my life, good fruit being done in my life, and all of these things. Make sure I'm not a carnal Christian. I'm not somebody who's wrongly thinking that I'm a Christian. The phrase that is used, that you use on Sunday, I think is great, is consequential living. So are we living our lives in a consequential way? So for some, that might be that seemed like a far off idea. If you could maybe provide a few examples for just the everyday normal Christian of what kind of ordinary consequential Christian living might look like.
Yes, I think the easiest route to do that is to first say what it's not.
Okay.
What it's not. And then I'll come to what it is.
Sure.
Because I think James would lose his mind living in the Southeast U.S. right now.
Right.
Because he said what was really common was nominal Christianity was passing as actual relationship with Jesus, and it wasn't being identified appropriately. And so people thought, I can just associate with Christianity, and there never has to be any evidence of that in my life, works, so to speak, in my life. James, I think, would lose his mind. I recently ran across a discussion with Carl Truman, and he was talking about Nietzsche. And he was saying, and I don't know Nietzsche well enough, but a catalyst for Nietzsche's philosophical thought was from nominal Christianity. Because he looked around, he made a bad connection. He said he thought nominal Christianity was Christianity. And then he ends up saying this can't be the whole thing.
Sure.
And so that, as a catalyst for Nietzsche developing a school of thought that's held onto, but is very anti-Christian.
Sure.
That being said, I think people have noticed it at different stages. We would say it's a pandemic in our society that people think in the Southeast. I've got a verse from Hobby Lobby, and I've got this country song that talks about Jesus, and he's going to do things with a steering wheel. And so I've just got all this stuff in my life where I'm affirming and I'm loosely associated with, and I even show up at church, and probably for many, there was a point in time when they said, yes, I think Jesus is the way to heaven.
Right.
But they've never made a decision in life, as you were referencing, that is consequential. So really what they're thinking is, because there are people who are legit Christians who show up at my church and do similar things, we must be on the right path.
Right.
So I think they think correlation is identification.
Okay.
So because we have similar things going on in our life, we must be identified as the same. I mean, I think our local Walmart,
Sure.
the one closest to us, has a lot of folks there who are foreigners, not originally from the U.S.
Absolutely.
And also me.
Right.
So if I said people should understand that I'm a foreigner because I shop at Walmart,
Right.
I'm this sophisticated British man, and that's how I want to be identified. because we all shop at this Walmart. I don't know that sophisticated Britishmen are there, but you get the idea.
I love that when it's British, it's not British man anymore. It's now Britishman.
Yeah.
Sophisticated Britishman.
I thought that's, yeah, if you're sophisticated, that's how you say it. That's like the first tip off. I'm not sophisticated. So that idea, right,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to be identified that way. Yes,
yeah.
I think is very, very, very common. If it came down to what's at the crux of it, when push comes to shove is how James is defining it. When push comes to shove, he keeps talking about it as trials and perseverance. Push comes to shove, will you stick with Jesus? So if there's something that would be, I think, more fulfilling on a weekend, like travel ball or something else, or I can say, we're not going to choose that. I know that looks like what all your buddies are doing,
right?
But we want to hold a commitment to church. So push comes to shove, I'm going to tell my kids we're not doing the thing you're begging to do, because I think there's a greater priority. These sort of consequential decisions in life.
Yes.
So I think there are a lot of decisions in our culture you might make that feel Christian-y.
Yes.
And there's a lot of correlation there. So are there any consequential ones where you are saying, all right, here is an example where I have cut 10% of my income because I want to give it to gospel initiatives, is a lot different than we put some money in the offering plate or online we give to the church on occasion, especially at Christmas or something. So I think you start to say, okay, it's not just correlative, it's consequential. It's very, very helpful. So I think it was good for you to reference that particular point, but I would go so far as to say that's what you should be looking for. And maybe just to tag on to that, I think a whole other idea is, well, how many consequential decisions do I need to have?
Sure.
Before I can say, all right, I'm on the right path.
Right.
So I think for us to be clear about that is helpful. And the clearest way to do it, if somebody wants more on this, 1 John chapter 5, verse 13, he says, I'm writing to you who believe in Jesus so that you will know you're going to heaven.
Yes.
What are evidence for somebody who claims to believe that you're on the right path to heaven? And he walks through a number of things in there. He's going to point to things like you have a desire for a relationship with other believers, and you're willing to make consequential decisions to maintain those relationships.
Yeah.
My church family gets priority, so to speak. And he says, on the flip side of it, if somebody is not on the right path, they're going to think, well, I'm not doing anything wrong. How dare you critique what I'm doing? They'll deny to have sin. So 1 John chapter 1, verse 7, if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus, his son, cleanses us from all sin. However, conversely, if we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. So one of the more consequential things I'm going to do is I'm going to confess I've sinned.
Sure.
And I'm going to confess that to people when it would sting a little bit and I don't want to admit it and it's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to own my sin is one of these evidences. So that, and also would indicate, it's not we're saying we never have sin.
Sure. Yeah.
There are definitely issues where we are not on the quote straight and narrow path. We do have sin in our lives.
Yeah.
It does exist. What would make you distinctly Christian is I'm going to own that.
Yeah.
I'm going to own that, turn away from it, repent. And so I think so I certainly covered a lot of sides to what consequential decisions look like.
Sure.
But hopefully we see a little more clearly.
Oh no, I think so, definitely. And hopefully, to you all watching, that's something that we would do. Certainly, I think, like I said, I think James at a variety of points calls us to introspection, think about our lives. And certainly this idea of trying to identify what path we're on, what kind of fruit we're producing, what kind of good works are evidencing our faith is good work to be done for each of you. So hopefully this discussion about what does consequential living look like, just as a way to kind of end this chat, would be helpful for you, and you can think about implementing some of those things. Anyway, we will catch you next time here on Hash It Out.